The Ruby Life Pools. Now, I've not done this, but you and a few of our guys did.
Yeah, so I really did not like Neltharis or Uldaman, which was disappointing to me because I thought Uldaman would be cool. There's something about like the holistic experience of dungeons. I'm not even talking about specifically mechanics. They were on heroic, so we basically didn't see any mechanics. The mechanics we did see, we were kind of like, what's that? Are we supposed to be dying here? Because we're like 20% HP, but, you know, our healer's keeping us alive and we've popped defensives. Are these mechanics? Uldaman had a really cool mechanic where the arena was like splitting like two and there was rotating fire beams. It felt like a cool boss mechanic.
Yeah.
But everything else was a little bit kind of boring mechanically. So I think the way I'll talk about this is very much the holistic experience of you're in here, it's a new, fresh experience. You're going, oh, wow, this is really enjoyable. Neltharis and Uldaman lacked that for me because they were kind of just... Neltharis is brown and a bit gold and a bit lavy. Feels like slag mines. I think people don't like slag mines very much because it's just brown and red.
I remember enjoying its bosses.
Its bosses were good, but like the overall experience is a bit dim and grim. And Neltharis is like evil villain lair for Neltharion, full of gold and, you know, all that stuff. And it was just like crowded and cramped and there's loads of mobs and I was like, it's all sludge in my head. And then Uldaman was the same, brown and orange and it's a sludge. And then Ruby Life Pools, and I'm immediately thinking this is like Shisui of the Violet Tides, the Stormblood dungeon. Because it's big, it's open, it's got similar kind of color schemes. I'm thinking, oh, this is very nice. This is much more enjoyable. Because there's greens, there's reds, there's blues, there's a whole load of colors. And it's open up, you've got a little couple bosses. It's immediately clear what's happening. You're like, this is very nice, but there's a lot of fire people everywhere. Like fire elemental and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, well there's an immediate kind of threat. As opposed to like Uldaman where you're like, I'm just killing people who are chilling in here. Until like the boss. Or same with like Neltharis, where I'm like, I feel like I'm kicking down the door of someone's house and just wrecking all their stuff. Whereas Ruby Life Pools was like, here's an open threat, you're cleaning this place up. And that felt really good. There's a couple of bits of movement around where like you hop on a dragon and it brings you around. No mechanics like in Grim Battle, but like just flying around is like, oh, and then you come out of the top, there's like a little cylinder, you come out of the top and like a dragon rouge, you go, oh, there's the big sky. That's very nice.
So it's like as
really
an
pretty
experience, it feels, I don't want to say dynamic, that's such a buzzwordy thing, but it feels like it's a whole big set piece.
It's like
there's things going on, there's like momentum to it.
Yeah, it's like I would avoid set piece just because I think a lot of gamers think set piece and think of it's Lara Croft running up a snowy mountain, but there's no actual danger, there's no gameplay. There's a little bit of that where it's like, yeah, this actually feels like there's something happening. It is an enjoyable experience in ways I find it hard to describe because it's just there's nice sights and sounds while I'm killing enemies that like contrast against the area, feel here for a reason. It was also pretty like understandable where you drop in, okay, here's these 4 little shrines, clean each one of them up by killing enemies and then go fight the boss. It was also very short, which I think quite liked. But it was just like, here's a boss. Oh, I've killed the boss. Here's the next boss because trash is kind of pointless, especially in lower difficulties as well.
Right, here, can we just on that? With what a modern WoW dungeon is in the Mythic Plus system, I have to say, I vastly prefer very short dungeons within Mythic Plus.
Same, they're way better.
I really, really dislike long dungeons in Mythic Plus. Now, I would like a long dungeon if it's like a 5-man raid. Then I really want a big, long, super flavorful dungeon, like a mega dungeon or something.
Love Kara, mate. Love Kara.
But yeah, in M+, I mean, I think about the dungeons that I like. It's, Maw Souls, Dark Heart Thicket, Tyrannus Scythe. Yeah. It's got to be the quicker stuff. And I think the reason why I prefer short is within like Mythic Plus is like a stressful experience. It feels like there's less, I don't know, is anxiety the word? Or
well, it's like it's
I guess the more that WoW feels like it's you're jumping into a greater rift, or I mean not literally, but just the way the dungeons feel. It's like the more that it's kind of like that in the Mythic Plus system. I don't know, for whatever reason, it's like I think quick hits almost fit Mythic Plus better than slow burns or medium burns in a dungeon.
Yeah, well, that's because
it's just a little feeling I have, and I think about what dungeons people seem to dread doing, and it seems to be the longer ones.
Yeah, well, the whole thing is the reward schema doesn't adjust for time. Nothing adjusts for time. it is same with the Maw of Souls problem from the get-go, where it's like, and that's the whole thing of like, that's why the keystone system basically exists, is because you would just spam the short dungeon because that's more likely to get you the better gear, because that's got the better gear per time ratio. And that's kind of thing where the system doesn't actually have safeguards for that. And that's the thing that's like really quite an oversight. So every single thing about it makes you want the shorter dungeon.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people are talking about, though, is like it's the stress. It's the punishment for failure. And I think that's it. The longer a dungeon is, the more it exacerbates the negatives inherent to the Mythic Plus system.
Yeah, because you've got basically... Yeah, because... And then maybe there's like a different amount of, I guess, leniency within the timer to allow for more mistakes. It's the same thing of like... this is going to be interesting, but Dark Souls bosses, right? A Dark Souls boss is a lot harder when you have lower damage. And that's nothing to do with anything about the boss itself. It's just the way you beat a Dark Souls boss is you DPS its health down while making no mistakes, or making as few as possible mistakes. Obviously, you've got your Estus, your heals and stuff, your tankiness to offset that. So more damage means less opportunities for mistake. And it's the same here, where if you are to turn aside, you have a lot less chances to do something that will basically break your key, or destroy your time. And it kind of evens out in the long run, but if you're in like a 45 or 50 minute dungeon, that means you've got 50 minutes of playing the game in which you could do something really daft like overpull and lose a bunch of time and kind of stagger releases and fuck up the run. So I think there's some of that as well, where it feels like just they're easier, and because dealing with the problems of Mythic Plus aren't necessarily fun in and of themselves, because racing the timer isn't fun. It's like kind of strategizing how you're going to do it is fun, and sometimes executing fights is fun. That you get more of that in the shorter overall run. Obviously, it's like different dungeon stuff will be different levels of fun, but like the execution of it isn't super fun a lot of the time for I think the majority of players, because of how realistically it's because of how I think less these days, but how punitive the affixes tend to be, and how it's like you rarely feel cool for doing something right. Every mechanic in the dungeon is designed to punish you for not doing it right. It's like there's only fail states, no big positive things.
Yeah.
There's a couple, like if you're using the items correctly in a Necrotic Wake or Spiral Ascension, something like that. But those are like kind of limited to every now and again, as opposed to the more overall, hey, you're just fighting mobs. Oh, sorry, you were fighting mobs for 40 minutes straight, and you kind of lost your, you lost your focus for a second, and nobody interrupted a big heal, and now you're like, fuck's sake. There's no real opposite of that, because your baseline is max DPS the whole time. Yeah. There's no moments for big pump now.
Dark Souls 9669, Super just saying, you've logged in and you realize that you're about to spend an hour to form a group. And I guess it's like that's it. It's like it's an hour to form a group, and then if your key is a really long dungeon and it's a high enough key that you then feel a degree of anxiety over like, oh, if one person cocks up 80% through, it's such a long dungeon. Oh no, it'll all be worthless. And then you do like that one big painful long dungeon run, and then you don't even get a bit of loot because of the delayed gratification of the vault. And then you just kind of feel like, oh, this was not fun.
Yeah. Netsucker, I'm being a little bit hyperbolic when saying like one missed interrupt, but it's more the idea of it's not about like what actually happened to the key. It's about the kind of feeling of failure and stuff like that. I think is a little bit more important, where it constantly feels like you're racing against like almost like you're shoveling water out of a boat sometimes is what M Plus feels like, as opposed to something a little bit more enjoyable. But maybe some of that is just because of kind of my experience with what like doing dungeons and as a DPS or a healer kind of is, where it's like there is a base level of fun to it, but that fun is often overwritten by kind of struggling with what's actually happening as opposed to like the fun part of it. But a lot of that's like UX and stuff like that, as opposed to like, because obviously I think interrupting a thing is like a fun bit of, oh, that's casting, I'll interrupt it, or oh, I know that's going to cast, so I'll target it and prep my interrupt. That's kind of fun, but it kind of gets lost in Civ M Plus when you're going really fast sometimes, which is certainly interesting.
Yeah, so I guess like that's kind of dungeons we'll kind of loop back around, I think, when we have a little bit more experience there.